Ever wonder why the world's most powerful figures all answer to the same forces? From my observation, it isn't often due to loyalty or principle, it's due to manipulation, by leverage. The world is run by compromise, quiet bargains and hidden truths, by deals that are struck in the shadows. In this part 2 episode of the Proxy Principle, we'll dive into my reawakening of some unanswered questions in regard to a record deal that I had embarked upon with one of the 80s most popular R&B performers, Al B. Sure. By examining his life, we may come up with some theories, if not answers, on some fine print never to be inked in our contract, as well as some other reasons he may have abandoned our project altogether. Because, quite frankly, and oftentimes, the company you keep helps tell the story. And if you listen to my last episode, you will recall the company I'm referring to and how it could all be relative. That intern at Uptown Records that trailed behind Al B. Sure, only to build one of the biggest empires in modern music history, as one of the most influential hip hop producers and record executives, making himself an icon in just 3 decades. I'm talking about Sean Diddy Combs, a music mogul with what some would call disturbing tastes, who had some of the biggest stars in the entertainment industry at his beck and call. But how did he have them at his beck and call? And why? Is it because he could provide them with the finer things in life? Or is it that some of those elite Hollywood types had the same dark appetite that he had? I mean, after Homeland Security agents raided his home in March of 2024, they found 900 bottles of Astroglide, 200 bottles of baby oil, and multiple bottles of ketamine, as well as seizing phones and computers. And that was just at his LA home. According to the lawsuit, it was alleged that the baby oil was actually laced with GHB, a substance commonly known as a date rape drug. Are those some of the finer things he was offering? Or was there something more nefarious going on? This investigation had been led by a human trafficking task force. So, was it some kind of honeypot operation that he was running? Or was it that he and his cohorts were able to separate business from pleasure? Because that sounds like quite an indulgence of pleasure to me. So, was it for his own personal gain? Was he a power-hungry human playing puppet master? Or did he have someone to answer to? I mean, Diddy's been connected at the highest level to government, Wall Street, and the economy. Regardless, I believe it was all for leverage. Every dirty little secret recorded on his devices, every crack in the souls who joined him, he tallied them without mercy. But for what purpose? Was that what the raid was for? To find out the purpose? Or was it to hide who may have been implicated? Those of us paying attention recognize that the Jeffrey Epstein connection with the intel community is just one of many networks spanning our globe. We'd be very naive to think that Hollywood wouldn't be involved while they push their agendas to the masses, seemingly more politically driven day by day. And keep in mind, it's not always the artists themselves that are compromised, but the brands they represent, or stage names we have come to know them as, that obey without question. Hollywood sells the illusion of freedom while bowing to compliance. Have you never wondered why some people can't be criticized? It's because the real power is off stage. The Diddy types are pulling the strings. The ones on camera? The ones in the recording studios? They're terrified of exposure, of ruin, and of the truth getting out. Every piece of blackmail was collected for leverage. Now, today, I'll be using some sources from a documentary you may have seen called Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy. And some of the quotes that grabbed my attention in this music doc were made by whom we've come to know as Al B. Sure, which in part is what made me want to go back down this rabbit hole. This is what he said. These are Al's words. Quote, Let's just say that there's a lot that goes on in the industry, which there's not much out to uncover. It's something that's been going on in the industry, and those who speak about it usually meet their demise. Unquote. Al claims that there was a bounty put out on him to silence him. And then he went on to say, there's a lot more bullshit than the public knows. Well, Al, I can relate. And we're going to uncover some of this bullshit you speak of right here and right now on the Proxy Principle.
The Proxy Principle.
Welcome back to the Proxy Principle. I'm Candi Rands. I want to preface that I am a great lover of people. I am also a lover of truth. But sometimes seeking truth when you love people, you can find that the road to peace can be somewhat bumpy. I am in no way, shape, or form accusing anyone of anything. I'm just trying to put together some puzzle pieces with statements that have already been given. Those of us who have been called names or manipulated or have been victims of betrayal for a long time are a little harder to offend, let alone made to be fearful, which is why I'm diving right in. I don't think Al would be offended based off of the statements he's recently made, because I think he gets it. And this brings me to the reason I'm exploring more in depth into my experience with Al B. Sure, because he was never anything but a gentleman to me, and or a friend, if you will, which is why the end result of what I thought would be a successful business merger didn't make a whole lot of sense. He was obviously involved in multiple projects, not having anything to do with the music contract he had offered me. I didn't think he was dangerous until my attorneys warned me of the time-worn plot twist that you only see in movies, considering the inordinate amount of money that I was told had been taken out on me in the form of an insurance policy. It appeared that someone might want to hurt me in some way in order to make a quick buck. But was that true? And if so, was it Al that wanted to hurt me? Or was it about control? How dependent was he in having full control of this subsidiary record label he spoke of? He himself went through a massive amount of health issues that he has insinuated, not only in the documentary that I've mentioned, but on Fox 5 New York, he claimed that Sean Diddy Combs, or people affiliated with Sean, did something to Al that caused him to have multi-organ failure. But why? Now, I know I broke down my experience with Al B. Sure in the last episode. In the case you missed it, let's do a little review with our favorite online encyclopedia, shall we? And it may seem as monotonous as listening to the begats and begets in the Bible, but all of the names I'm about to mention hold significant meaning. So please just bear with me. Wikipedia lays out the following. Albert Joseph Brown III, born June 4th, 1968, known professionally as Al B. Sure! Is an American singer-songwriter, record producer, radio host, and former record executive. He was born in Boston and raised in Mount Vernon, New York. How did he get his start? Well, old-school rapper Dr. Jekyll, one half of the short-lived rap duo Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who was also known as Andre Harrell, founded the record label Uptown Records. It was modeled as a boutique version of Motown. They just added a hip-hop flavor to it. Some of the label's signees included Heavy D and the Boys, Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, the Notorious B.I.G., and of course, Al B. Sure! During the late 1980s, Al B. Sure's debut album, In Effect Mode, sold more than 3 million copies, putting Uptown Records on the map. It topped the Billboard R&B chart for 7 straight weeks. It included the single Night and Day, which was the song he said he wanted me to remake, by the way. That song topped the R&B chart and reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, and Off on Your Own Girl, which also topped the R&B chart. He received numerous Grammy and American Music Award nominations and won an American Music Award for Best New R&B Artist. He also received several Soul Train Award nominations and won that award for Best New Artist. Brown carried the title of being one of New Jack Swing's most popular performers into the 1990s. Now, around 1990, a 20-year-old Sean Puffy Combs began an internship at Uptown Records. As far as meeting Sean Combs, Al says he doesn't remember much. It's not like they hung out on a daily basis or things of that nature. But according to Al, what you did know about Sean, one of Sean's best attributes, was that he let everybody know in the camp that nobody was going to be bigger than him. With Al's little bit of success being the first #1 artist and the first platinum artist on the label, Al said he didn't think people knew that he was the one that funded Uptown Records. He said he was working with Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, Heavy D and the Boys, and that they took the record company of Uptown from zero to a $1 billion corporation or somewhere close to that. As a writer-producer, Al had helped introduce the music industry to such multi-platinum acts as the quartet Jodeci, who later branched off as the duo Casey and JoJo, as well as R&B singer-songwriter Faith Evans. Now, Evans initially performed as a backing artist for Al, and Jodeci was assigned to Sean Combs, who took on the task of developing their new act. Before Sean was an intern, Al met a woman named Kimberly Porter backstage at Madison Square Garden. The first time he laid eyes on Kimberly, he said that was it. And they had a kid together. His name is Quincy. Al had influence on getting Kim a job at Uptown, and Kim became the receptionist. At one point, Al said he was working with Casey and JoJo on a soundtrack, and Sean came by the studio, and he mentioned Sean may have been with his significant other at the time, whose name was Mesa. Now, Al was in the studio with Kimberly, and they had the baby with them at this point. Al was at the mixing board. Sean walks into the studio, and he looks over, and he sees Kimberly. And she was holding their baby Quincy, and Sean said, "Hey, man, I wish I had a beautiful girl like that." And Al was like, you do. It's Misa." According to Diddy's childhood friend, Tim Patterson, it was love at first sight with Diddy seeing Kim. Tim said it was a stop in your tracks moment, an oh my God moment, I gotta have her moment for Diddy. And he continued that Sean Diddy Combs gets what he wants. The whole staff watched it happen. Sean had no shame in his aggression towards Kim and his approach to her. No shame. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this was strike one for Al in regard to Kim, because Sean did get Kim, and they dated on and off for years. But somewhere around July 1993, Uptown Records founder Andre Harrell fired Puffy because they were having some issues. Not necessarily bad. Harrell said he let him go because he knew Puffy wouldn't be able to grow as an artist at Uptown. But I can only assume this added more fuel to the fire, because within 2 weeks, Sean launched his own label, Bad Boy Records, taking with him the notorious B.I.G. Uptown Records label declined quickly, while Sean signed more acts to Bad Boy, including Faith Evans. In tandem, Sean's in-house production team, the Hitmen — how cute is that name? The Hitmen worked with Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, Usher, Lil' Kim, TLC, Mariah Carey, Boyz II Men, SWV, and Aretha Franklin, as well as some other household names. But let's jump back to the Kim Porter intel for a minute. According to Gene Deal, who was Sean Combs' bodyguard from 1991 to 2005, Kim and Puff were always on in Puff's mind, and never off. He said Puff was sick with her. No matter who he dealt with or who he had over, he always ran back to Kim. Mila Morales, Sean Combs' makeup artist, says she has photos of Sean and Kim Porter in Paris Fashion Week, of Kim and her on the yacht in Saint-Tropez. He would fly the glam squad out for everything, even vacations, because they had to make sure that Kim Porter looked perfect, and Sean had to look perfect. Mila said, Kim was from Georgia. She wasn't this glam girl that the world perceived. We made her glam because she was Diddy's arm candy. Sharon Carpenter, an on-air journalist at Revolt from 2013 to 2015, said, "It seems that Diddy ended up adopting Quincy, Kim and Al's son, and raising Quincy as his own. This is where I'm sure things escalated to the umpteenth degree between Al and Diddy, because Al has a different story. Al said he has to keep in mind that people were fed this propaganda against him over the years, that Puffy adopted his kid. But why was there propaganda? Did Al disappear? Was he a deadbeat dad, or was he compromised? Al says there was no adoption. None. He said it was all crafted by a publicist. And if you haven't noticed, Quincy's name is still Brown. People thought Al was absent, things of that nature. But Al was basically instructed by Kimberly. Al was told that Puffy wasn't too happy about anyone who had a relationship with Kim. Kimberly would warn Al and made him promise on their son Quincy's life, just stay out of the way, don't get involved. She would plead with him not to do that tough guy Mount Vernon shit. She would say, you will get killed. Now, these statements were all before Diddy's legal proceedings, and it's as far as I would go, but he said he would share more at some point. He had to refrain because what he didn't want to divulge was evidence. He said, let's just say you got to listen to Kimberly, because not only was she trying to save me, but I think he was alluding that she was trying to avoid danger in her own life as well. I mean, that would make sense, right? If she was warning Al. In the documentary, they then cut back to Gene Deal, Sean's former bodyguard, and asked him if he had ever seen Sean be disrespectful to Kim. And Gene said one time he got a call to rush over to St. Luke's Hospital. He said, she looked like she was bruised and stuff like that, but she wasn't saying much of anything. They in turn spoke with Lisa Bloom, a civil rights attorney who was representing one of Diddy's many victims who alleged that she saw acts of violence with regard to Kim Porter. She was horrified. It was appalling, she said, and she was threatened into not reporting it. November 15th, 2015, was a day Al says he'll never forget. He was on his way to film the opening packages for the BET Awards. The phone rang, and it was a dear friend of his asking, "Did you hear about Kimberly?" And he said, "What about Kimberly? I just saw her." She said, "I don't know, but I've heard that Kimberly has died." Kim was apparently found dead at her home, and an autopsy had shown that Kim had died due to complications from pneumonia. She was 47. Al said that was a day that will never leave his mind. There's just an empty feeling of like, nah, something's not right with this. Because the last encounter between Al and Kim was at their son Quincy's premiere for his Christmas special, Holiday Calendar. Sean came. She said, this was probably the best day in a very long time, seeing all of them in the same place. Al said she was looking amazing. She was healthy. She was fantastic. Then Al alluded that this was a murder. Then he asked the person interviewing him if he was supposed to say, allegedly. Al B. Sure made further allegations on social media and called on law enforcement to investigate Kim Porter's death. Although his allegations are unproven, he said he did think he owed it to Kimberly to share a small portion of the truth. After Sean and Kimberly started seeing each other back in 1994, Kimberly and Al obviously remained friends. Kimberly started to confide in Al that something wasn't right. According to Al, Kim said that Sean's soul had gone completely dark, like he just wasn't there. She made Al promise not to ever reveal that because she was in complete fear of what might happen. What Al says he does know is that before her death, she was keeping a diary. He claims someone got the passcode to her phone and her computer, and that they found out that she was writing down what was going on behind closed doors. The public had no idea. It was happening right in front of the inner circle, but there were a lot who supposedly looked the other way. Then, a twisted turn of events happened on July 12th, 2022. Al collapsed while he was working on new music. He said it was not the first, second, or third time that he'd been in that position where he actually went down, but July 12th was the day he was hospitalized. Years before this hospitalization, Al had gone under bariatric surgery, and some of the symptoms he experienced had been known to be potential side effects of that surgery. But he says on this collapse, he was basically dying. He was intubated. He was on a ventilator with a tracheotomy. They were sending him to hospice because there was nothing else that they could do. Al explains that they were sending him to die, and what transpired in between, from what he found out later, after he awoke from a 2-month coma, he had multi-system organ failure. As part of his treatment, Al received a new liver and said that he was now on the mend. During the latest interviews, he said he couldn't say too much, but what he could say was this. Every single person, and he said he was mindful enough, he kept a record of every single person who was sent to set Al up to assist in his attempted murder. He said they're in his files. He went on to say, death is not a game. Being in a coma, being on a ventilator for 38 days, being septic, 60 to 70 blood transfusions, it's a lot. Further, he said, in hindsight, he was glad that things transpired the way they did, because this journey has prepared him for another level. He then made a decision to go hard as it relates to opening the case on what he called the miraculous death of Kim Porter. He said Kimberly is gone because she was going to be Cassie Ventura. Now, we all remember Cassie, don't we? The one who was also in a long-term relationship with Sean Diddy Combs from 2007 to 2018. She's the one who we saw getting the shit beat out of her in that hotel hallway by Diddy. And she's the one that filed the lawsuit against Combs alleging that he had subjected her to a decade-long cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking. Al thought she would be the one to blow the lid off of the entire situation. Now, how many of you have heard of Jaguar Wright? Well, she's an American singer-songwriter who has performed and collaborated alongside The Roots and Jay-Z. But that's not how I came to know of her. She started popping up in my social media feeds a few years ago, and I found her to be interesting because this woman does not hold back on her interviews. She's fearless and unfiltered on unveiling some of the industry's raw secrets, whether she's exposing hidden agendas or just venting her stark naked truths. Well, she had been talking with Al when he came out of his coma, and she brought up the fact that Uptown Records had started with 5 people: Andre Harrell, Al B. Sure, Heavy D, Puffy, and Kim. The only 2 left are Puffy and Al almost died. Heavy D was found dead. Heart attack. Andre Harrell? Heart attack. And Kim supposedly died from pneumonia. But Jaguar went on to claim that there was the first coroner's report that ruled that it was a homicide and that they found toxins in her body to prove she had been poisoned. She then asked, do you know what all of these people had in common? And when Al enters the conversation, he says, this person was telling a story, this person was writing a book, this person was about to tell the truth. Why is everybody dead? He said, call this a coincidence. Get the fuck out of here. And then he said, now you're all about to understand how I ended up in a coma. Going back to Sharon Carpenter, the on-air journalist from Revolt, she said a lot of people were spreading a lot of rumors that Diddy might have had something to do with Kim's death. There were people that said, well, she knew too much about him, and she was about to reveal all. But Sharon said that there was absolutely no proof, no evidence, nothing of the sorts. You know, there are just a lot of conspiracy theories out there, but no proof. And the autopsy showed that it was pneumonia. Remember, Sharon Carpenter is a British broadcast journalist and television host known for her work with Revolt TV. But here's a tidbit you might not know. She was handpicked by Sean Diddy Combs to anchor the network. Jaguar Wright then stated in a later podcast they needed to cut everybody else out to make sure that nobody got forced to testify. Because, you know, Rico hurts. When she was then questioned by her co-host if she felt the feds, the prosecution, put on a good case, he asked, do you feel they put their best foot forward? And her reply, I think considering what's going on with the Epstein list right now, I think they did the job they needed to do. Isn't it funny? There were no celebrities at Diddy's freak-offs, and there were no clients on Epstein's island. And who was it that handled both the Diddy case and Ghislaine Maxwell case? Maureen Comey, daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, who has now been indicted for lying to Congress and obstruction of justice, best known as one of the lead prosecutors who secured a conviction in 2021 against Ghislaine Maxwell for conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein for sexually abusing and trafficking minors. Maureen also prosecuted in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs, who was found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking charges. But he was convicted on 2 counts of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. Maureen was then fired this last July by the Trump administration, and she claims that it was solely or substantially because of relation to her now indicted father, James B. Comey. The show just gets more convoluted by the day, folks. Jaguar might be onto something, though. In a world where power buys silence, there's one charge they can't escape: RICO. And they'll do anything, as she says, to keep it from landing. We still don't know who's on that Epstein list, and Diddy didn't get RICO charges. He was, however, convicted in July of flying people across state lines for extended drug-driven sexual escapades. Jurors acquitted him of racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking charges that could have carried a life sentence. Out of all of the data that they collected, and with all of the folks who supposedly had dirt on him, what evidence was admissible? And which witnesses were not allowed to come forward? Is it a fair punishment that he only got sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison? Is it impartial adjustment that the year he's already spent in jail will now count toward that total sentence? I mean, from what I've heard, jail is a little different than prison. Oh, and sorry, I forgot. He was also fined $500,000 and ordered 5 years of supervised release once he leaves prison. Is this justice? We may never get all of the answers on if whether or not he was a puppet master of a shadow network built on secrets, or someone given the illusion of power only to be just another fall guy. We could go round and round about the infinite possibilities of the who's, what's, where's, and when's of this circus, and I could give you more names and more people involved and way more stories, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. But the farther you go down this rabbit hole, the more it seems like everybody's involved. And until we see evidence, we got nothing but speculation. Al announced in May that he had a memoir coming out called Do You Believe Me Now? He made that announcement ahead of Diddy's trial, but the publishers, Simon and Schuster, had pulled it from their website, and we were told that the project was on ice. Thanks, Simon and Schuster. This never-ending labyrinth has me confined to this music maze. Why did you have to do that? Because we all need answers. Well, maybe it's because Al mentioned that it was because he wasn't going to reveal as much about Diddy as what the publishers wanted. Regardless, Al has received more than 40 inquiries by production companies and networks since Sean's incarceration to participate in documentaries, interviews, and etc. He said that he was surprised to even be having the conversation, to which I assumed he was alluding to the fact that he can't believe that he's even alive. But remember, he said he owed it to Kimberly to share a small portion of the truth. Sounds like Al has had a lot on his plate since the time I met him, and even before. But this story isn't really about me. It's about those who signed bad contracts and/or those who have been compromised in this so-called glamorous industry some of us signed up for, or those who were looking for a way out of this destructive delusion but never had a chance. Maybe the contract given to me was a standard contract for Al. Maybe he just decided he no longer wanted to do business with me. Maybe he was protecting me. And maybe I got ghosted metaphorically speaking, but metaphorically speaking sure is better than literally being turned into a ghost. I'm actually still alive to tell my story. I could be mad about this whole situation. I could play victim and say, well, this is what happened to me, when the fact of the matter is, I got lucky. Because if I'm being honest, I put myself in situations that could have turned really ugly. As a female in the entertainment industry, I hear a lot of chicks say they want to be treated as an equal. And if Al and his associates hadn't been gentlemen, well, I could have ended up being just another buried story, if you know what I mean. And bottom line is this. There are so many wonderful things happening in the world, so why would I ever dwell upon things that might not be so appetizing? Yes, bad things happen. And maybe there is a reason I know these things. Maybe there's a reason that the powers that be allowed me to get close enough to the fire without getting burned. I am alive. I have a really good life. And there is beauty in everything, even in the darkness. It all depends on the kaleidoscope perspective you choose to look through. I currently have no choice but to look at this as being just business. It was an interesting time in my life, and I'm glad I have this story that I get to carry with me. I'm also hoping that one day we'll all be able to get back to an entertainment industry that's just about making art, if it ever was. I don't have all the answers. Does Al be sure? I'm not sure, but I bet Albert Joseph Brown III has a clue. And Al, if you're listening, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to get your take on the whole story, and I'd bet my listeners would too. And listeners, I want to know what you think. So make sure you leave your hypotheses in the comments. We may just revisit this topic at some point. And to all of you who have been commenting, private messaging me, etc., asking how you can assist in getting more episodes of the Proxy Principle out there, be sure to hit the follow button on wherever you get your podcast. And make sure you share the Proxy Principle with all of your friends and neighbors. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. I'm Candi Rands, and I'll see you next time on the Proxy Principle.
The Proxy Principle.
Introducing Vanity Fair, the band that brings unforgettable performances covering more than 25 music genres from the 1920s to today. With a growing set list and a range of ensembles, they're perfect for corporate events, festivals, weddings, and more. When you want entertainment that stands out, Vanity Fair delivers every time. Their team is dedicated to working with you, offering personalized experiences that match your vision and your budget, and creating a truly memorable event. Ready to book Vanity Fair for your next event? Visit vanityfair-theband.com.